Knocked. Overhead.
So I've been playing Final Fantasy 15.
Cue a generic intro about how I was still a child when this game was first announced, but now, it here.
Imagine, if you will, the hottest meals contemporary entertainment has to offer, and now do the exact same for the opposite sex. Then smash all of them together into one big cauldron, and whichever sick fucking concoction it'll end up spewing out should give you a pretty good idea of what the main cast is like. Meet Noctis, an emo boy toy and royal heir to the throne; Ignis, your resident encyclopedia and all-round gent; Prompto, who's basically Titus but with a less annoying voice and also total straight bait; and Gladiolus, the token manly guy man whose only purpose is to make the few tough guys playing this feel right at home. Oh, and also girls, probably. Girls don't play video games. I'm down with the twinkness though. And for all intents and purposes, the main cast is pretty fun. Our main heroes are hijinking and shenaniganing all over the place, which is good considering that this is one hell of a big dick, big budget JRPG adventure, and all of the cuties surrounding them and the occasional villain are pretty okay characters as well. But of course, we can't be having too much fun. So to balance out the boy toy man bang, there's also a shit ton of political conflict, drama, self-doubt, and determination that results in a good old war. The entire world is falling apart basically. And due to Noctis being of royal descent, our smack dicks have found themselves smack dick in the middle of this dick smacking. For now though, that's enough about the plot. I'll get back to it later, but based off of the demos and the anime, I feel like most people have probably already made up their minds about whether or not they like these characters or the idea of a bro-bang road trip. After all, everyone's biggest worry, including my own, was whether or not if the gameplay and the battle system specifically would hold up for an entire game and not get boring. So, just to preface everything I'm about to say, is okay. The combat itself certainly ain't perfect by any means, but as a whole, the game is pretty okay good. Said hole fills up your hole with shitty but pretty dungeons, the mixiest of mixed bag of bosses, and sprawling but not entirely boring and mechanically satisfying open world gameplay with plenty to see, do, and cream yourself over. After a brief introduction and a cut the title card opening sequence, the game gives you a simple objective and just kinda lets you go. The world of EOS is definitely a lot more structured than the general sandbox affair, which is good as it avoids MGS5 levels of barrenness. If anything, it felt a bit more like a classic Zelda or Final Fantasy XII without the screen transitions and instead highways in between the still very organized levels that one traverses using a car, chocobo, or your very own feet. Not sure if I really dig the fact that a simple loading screen has been replaced with minutes of driving, considering that the car is mostly automated still. Even when driving manually, you're still stuck on a rail, preventing you from doing anything too crazy. Shit like making a U-turn, for instance, is just a button press away, and the car will turn flawlessly for you at a mild stick flick. Of course, there are plenty of fast travel options available from map screen, nor is the game at all limiting in your usage of these, so I'm more or less fine with it, I guess. In any case, a story event will happen, or you'll talk to an NPC, thus engaging a side quest, to then get a wee marker telling you where to go, and once you've gone and done the do, you'll get EXP to level up, AP to use on the totally not the fucking sphere grid again you guys Ascension menu, where you unlock new mobilities, and also loot that one can exchange for money at the various storefronts plopped around the place to then buy new weapons, general healing items, and plenty of shit regarding the lads, their many hobbies and fetishes. Noctis, for instance, is quite partial to fishing, so you can get him some gear like lures and new wires, and Ignis is one hell of a cook, thus requiring you to purchase the necessary ingredients and so on. Both of these hobbies come together during nighttime, where the lads need to get tucked in and go Betty by in order for the XP accumulated over the course of the day to get dispersed accordingly, and for the food to get cooked with the ingredients bought or the fish caught, making for a neat temporary stat boost for tomorrow. It's like they somehow took these small, inconsequential bullshitteries and actually turned them into proper mechanics by integrating them into the game, thus making shit relevant to the overall experience. Even the sphere grid, aka ascension system, aka mildly interactive visualized skill tree, has things related to elements outside of battle. Stuff like this just makes the open world elements oddly satisfying to play around with. Everything works together and nothing ever felt pointless or like it was more than a time waster. It's really quite neat. Especially cool is how they keep a lot of it tucked away. Or, well, I guess you could argue whether or not any of this is good, but things just kinda happen as you play. For the first couple of hours, I wasn't busy with what level I was at or which weapons I was using or if I had enough potions. Hell no! I simply went out into the wild to conquer the desert I found myself in, took a cheeky peeky inside an old barn, killed some rabid beasties, and got sucked into a fetch quest or two, all the while getting stronger and learning how the game worked. Even the plot takes a bit of a backseat as the story clearly favors casual banter and dialogue while walking over forcefully stuffing cutscenes down your urethra, which is pretty fucking good. Well, but unless you want shit stuffed up your urethra, I guess. While exploring the barren Von Wasteland, some robo-cunts or wolf-cunts or demon-cunts might awkwardly spawn unannounced, thus initiating a battle involving you holding down R1 to lock on, pressing triangle to dash on over, and then holding down circle until everything is dead. Of course, you could also choose to press square to auto-dodge every once in a while, but that requires too much effort for a thinking man such as myself. Not to mention that doing this costs MP. Oh boy! If it sounds like I'm taking the piss, then that's because I am. I tend to record these naked, and being in my early 20s, I'm obviously rife with incontinence. And if it isn't me, then it's definitely this fucking bastard child of a hybrid battle system that seems to have let itself go. To be honest, I actually kinda like it, but it's just a massive fucking mess for a variety of reasons. One reason is that dodging doesn't cancel attack animations, so you need to time said button holding by doing it before the attack happens. I like that. It adds a mild tactical element and it keeps it from being too brainless. Is what I would have said if the enemy's attacks were actually telegraphed accordingly. Is what I would have said if I actually knew if they were or not, as my camera was way too occupied shoving bush in my fucking face. Oh, and also, just look at the amount of shit on screen at once. More than half of the time, I had no idea what the hell I was seeing, where I was, or what I was even doing, due to the absurd number of enemies and particles clogging up my shit.
At least that took care of the incontinence.
Don't worry though, when an enemy does do an overtly telegraphed move, you'll get a wee prompt telling you to block and then another one telling you to parry.
I also like that. It is neat.
And the way that it slows down and speeds up, really exacerbating the impact,
Feels pretty fucking good, too.
The fact that they even had to resort to on-screen prompts alone is already a testament to how hard it is to do the do. A big reason for this is the barely functioning lock-on. It's a lot better now than how it was in the demo, sure, but it still doesn't auto-lock on to another target once you've killed the last, and it jerks the camera all over the place once you do lock on successfully, trying desperately to get you the right angle. And I totes appreciate the fact that it tries, but if Kingdom Hearts could get it right all the way back in 2000, who gives a shit, then surely Mr. 10 years of development, $1 million budget Final Fantasy 15 can do so as well. In an attempt to make the combat less shit though, they added a weapon system exclusive to Noctis, seeing as he's the only one you control, team attacks, and a magic crafting system because we needed crafting you guys. Back in the demo days, people expected the weapons to be almost Final Fantasy XII-like, allowing you to create combos beforehand as it were and then letting you execute those in combat, somewhat similar to the Gambit system. This did not happen, though the fucking comparison stayed for some reason. At least it's better than comparing it to fucking Devil May Cry, Jesus Christ people. But yeah, you just pick a weapon for Noctis to use as you hold circle to tear ass and follow the D-pad to switch. All weapons kinda have their own stats or an element requiring at least some modicum of thought in regards to what you want to repeatedly hit people over the head with. It's not much, but I did quite enjoy sword slamming a bitch, then warping upward
And lunging down with my holy trident of doom Dragon Warrior style.
Funnily enough, for me it was the very act of warping that kinda make this work in the end. I try to not let this protrude in my reviews too much, but I'm definitely not a gameplay first kinda guy. If a game has shitty or frustrating gameplay but also a memorable story, a cool atmosphere, or simply appeals to me artistically in one way or another like Deadly Premonition or Tulip,
then I can still dig.
So it came as quite the shock that, much like Final Fantasy XIII, I wasn't really digging it at first. The demo especially kinda had me a bit worried, despite also seeing heaps of potential still. And while I wouldn't say that potential has been anywhere near met, I did start to enjoy it as I got the hang of how and when to dodge, and how the warping complemented that very well.
Biggie! My pleasure.
Besides warping and dodging just looking cool, it also gives way to a lot of other mechanics. You see, a lot of the team-based attacks and parries are contextual, be it your relative position to an enemy or one of the lads, or just which weapon you have equipped or how much HP you have. Though, given the chaos and the cluttered UI, you probably won't even notice. I sure as fuck didn't at first. I was just going on my merry way unlocking things on the Ascension screen, and the new attack would say something like, "Ignis will now ground pound the floor when targeting smaller enemies." Okay, well, I guess I'll do that then. I'll just be here in the corner holding circle, like I always do. Where it was while dodging appropriately and warping around a lot that I started triggering shit like this all over the place. All of a sudden, I went from having these awkward, janky-ass sword fights to having light-speed dashing ballet dances where I actually felt in control of what I was doing despite the shitty camera. So really, it is in knowing how to deliberately trigger those sequences that the game's tactical mechanical thinking comes into play. And you'll either be fine with that idea or you won't. In my opinion, either way though, I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that the combat system as a whole is flawed on a base level. Like, the concept of simply holding down button to make action happen is itself just a bad idea.
But they stuck with it.
Clearly felt strongly about it and polished that turd up so much that they ended up building an entire all-you-can-eat buffet around it. And you can eat around that turd and have a great time, or get unlucky and have a few poop particles in your meal. But in both cases, despite how good the food might be as a whole, you still can't help but feel that something kinda smells like shit. Just like every game that has ever gamed within the AAA hemisphere, there's a very noticeable cinematic influence, which I guess is mostly a good thing, but just like every game that has ever gamed within the AAA hemisphere, it is also a bit of a fucking prolapse. Mainly during the dungeons and most of the boss fights. When in cave, for instance, it means that everyone starts walking like they just had a dick up the butt. A few awkward and sometimes effective jump scares will happen, and also dark and dank because you need them The Last of Us tier spooks in your JRPG, obviously. Not gonna lie though, I honestly love this approach. At times, shit may have gone on for a bit too long, but I can't help but deny how immersed I was during these dungeons. The lighting, the pacing, the lat banter all made for some pretty great mild horror atmosphere. But knowing how the camera works and how cluttered the screen gets out in the open plains, you may already begin to see how tight earthy buttholes and gaping ancient temples might become a bit of a mechanical mess. Well, that and the fact that each Dungeoni typically only has about 2 enemy types and that the layouts are either excessively maze-like or absurdly linear does not an okay good time make. Not a bad time either, and because of the presentation they were all equally exciting at first, but shit just isn't good enough to sustain that and only highlights the combat's flaws rather than that it complements them. And as for the bosses... I'd like to go really in depth, but what it essentially boils down to is that almost every boss has the main combat's issues multiplied times 10 and are also riddled with quick time events, resulting in long, drawn-out camera cuntfests. Given the warping, I'd wager that faster bosses would have been a much better choice. Looking at this epic-ass impromptu air battle with Arnea, I'd certainly like to think so. But instead, all you get is big, slow dudes one either has to wail away at for hours or are made to wait for the game to tell you which button to press. During the Leviathan fight, I even broke the hit counter just because of the stupid amounts of HP that fucker had. And all that's excluding the issue where, well, Do you have any idea what you're seeing right now? Because I sure as fuck hadn't. Much like the dungeons, the introduction, build-up, and presentation are honestly among the best it's ever been within the series. Those epic FMV moments from Final Fantasy 9 or 8 are now made playable. It's just, the moment that happened, I wish that wasn't the case. Anyway, despite being frustrating, the game is never hard as you're ostensibly immortal. Call of Duty health and MP regen aside, if you stuck up on elixirs and Phoenix Downs, you will not die. Should Noctis' HP reach 0 somehow, then he'll just sit there for a solid 10 seconds waiting for you to open menu and pop a cheeky feather to get by.
Wow, this place is so romantic.
Then you get to enjoy it with us.
All three of us.
You are a lucky man.
If there's one thing this game certainly excels at in my opinion though, it's the sense of adventure and character interactions. The road tripping and playing dress up with the boys vibes in this are fucking real, dude. Everyone kinda has that
I'm a model and you know what I mean.
look about them, just as always, but with Roberto Ferrari being involved with the character designs, Final Fantasy 15 honestly has the most fuckable cast ever created. Which amplifies the douchebag in his mid-20s driving around in a black BMW with tinted windows bumping Calvin Harris songs at 2 AM aesthetic to maximum fuckboy levels. And as a scholar in the arts of fuckboyism and lads night out antics, I can quite confidently say that the banter at display is of the utmost highest caliber. There's pre-cutscene angst banter, post-cutscenes jokes banter, walking around in a cave banter, discussing the female characters banter, going out fishing banter, and even totally not gay bondage banter. I really, and I do mean really, cared about my boys. The four of them are built up well whilst remaining unstereotypical, nor do they get to wanna be deep, making them, as well as the plot as a whole, pretty darn relatable. Considering how the last crop of Final Fantasy games were, I did not expect this, but it would actually seem like they took a trip back down basic bitch lane and simply went with your typical evil empire of machine versus good land of magic bullshit. That involves a band of heroes going on a quest to stop said empire by collecting ancient relics, all with their own element and or theme, so basically just like Final Fantasy 1. After that, some really beautiful vistas that miraculously enough don't look like copy-pasted billion-dollar budget Arma maps, some stunning as fuck ass cities, and plenty of other audiovisual stimuli that, to me at least, made exploring this world and its characters a lot of fucking fun. Besides the game flopping its giant dick around, it also impresses with its minutia. Like how it has cute little music cues while silently overlooking a gaping gorgeous gorge. Or how Ignis' stupid cockatoo hair flaps in the wind and how the lads then start cracking jokes about it.
Damn, this wind's strong. No! My perfectly groomed hair! Think you got it bad? Check out Ignis. Whoa! You're right.
It's rude to stare.
Top lad banter.
To be honest, I was a bit worried that exploring so many barren wastelands would get boring. But it's neat touches like this, frequent action, small collectible busywork thingies, and plenty of cool shit to gawk at that actually made it surprisingly engaging. Good game feel and tight pacing regarding geographical layouts also add to this a lot. Not to mention the world building with shit like each town having its own fashion sense and style of architecture.
They knocked. Check it out.
What is it?
Or how you can learn more about the overarching war story by listening to the radio or by hearing the townspeople talk amongst themselves.
No, I'd live here if I could.
It's been a long ass time since I felt the Lindblom feels while exploring a city in a Final Fantasy game. That said though, there is some very minor, I can't quite put my finger on what levels of jank going on all over the place. The jump button when on Chocobo for instance is swapped with what's normally the attack button, leading to me often bringing out sword while walking or awkwardly bumping into a fence whilst riding with the boys.
Forgot about those.
Look where you're going!
Didn't mean to do that.
By far, the biggest issue here though is the fact that there's way too many functions mapped under just the X button.
Look where you're going!
Anything from picking up shit to jumping to getting in car to interacting with people to examining signs to refueling and to opening doors are all done with X. So if there's more than one prompt nearby, get ready to awkward. In regards to actually having to have seen the movie or the anime though, I'm quite happy to say that that's not necessary. The anime sets up backstory stuff which helps you care for the lads a little, but the game does that just fine on its own. And Kingsglaive establishes a lot of relevant information about the game's world and its political conflicts, but that 9 gig day 1 patch included some of the scenes to be spliced in PS1 FMV style in the relevant locations. Which might be why so many reviews went off about the game being confusing, because after the first 3 hours or so, shit really starts going down, and without that Kingsglaive knowledge,
Insomnia has fallen.
doesn't mean jack shit to you. But this mediates that for the most part. What does irk me about the story is how it introduces some plot elements in a fairly scatterbrained manner during the final stretch. In the end, I'd still say that these inclusions add to the plot in a good way, but you can definitely see the moment where they ran out of fucking time. Which might suck smeggy dicks, but at least it's no Metal Gear Solid 5. In any case, the actual writing of the dialogue itself is pretty darn good. I see a lot of people going on about good writing or bad writing, and I've even seen some say that this game has bad writing. Likely due to what I just mentioned, but shit like that isn't really a writing problem now, is it, mate? That's like a directing or a scenario issue more than anything else. Either way, I feel like the zeitgeist will look favorable upon this game later down the line. I saw on Twitter that Square struggled with doing character interaction since Final Fantasy IX, which they have, yet I'd like to liken it to that game in a way. You see, when I think of Final Fantasy IX, I don't think about how shitty Ibsen's castle is, or Kuja's lair, or how tediously slow the battle speed is, how clunky and badly introduced certain story elements near the end are, like fucking Garland and shit, or just how simple the ability systems are. Nah man, I remember the fun adventures, the memorable banter, and the eye-catching scenes, cities, and camera angles, and I feel that most will feel the same about Final Fantasy 15 years from now as well.
Man, wasn't it cool how Prompto totally opened up to Noxus?
Wow, remember how beautiful it was when you first explored Alticia taking the gay romantic boat ride?
Yeah, what a neat and memorable gaming experience.
And if that doesn't happen, then y'all can suck my dick. This game is tight as fuck, boy! As stated in a few interviews and articles prior to its release, for the last, I'd say about 7 hours of the game, it drops the open world facade and turns into a more linear, story-driven, cutscene-heavy experience. The fishing, the driving, the fun times with the boys while camping, doing hunts and side quests are all traded in favor of epic sweeping set pieces, really beautiful urban environments, and some of the best storytelling in the series since Final Fantasy IX, but sadly also some very not great gameplay. Part of me hesitates to call it bad outright, but if the story hadn't picked up in the way that it did, I likely would not have had fun. Thing is that the reason that the game is good at all is due to how all of its elements come together, essentially masking the clunky bits to a degree. So, if you were to take that out of the equation, you're just left with almost nothing but shitty combat. And not only that, but it even straight up stops being an RPG at one point. There's this whole 1 hour segment that's just spooky scary stealth with infamous magic. Combined with the fact that I had Noctis wear his snow gear because fucking snow, it didn't even remotely look or play like the game I was playing the day before. Not that I didn't dig it at all, but it was just really fucking weird. Plus, the final dungeon is actual fucking garbage. When the IGN review stated that the linear section of the game shat itself, I was skeptical as I thought that it just was the Linear Games Police patrolling the streets once again. But no, it really does take a massive hit. The car's gone and now the boys travel by train, and so they stop wherever the train stops, essentially getting flung from story beat to story beat.
But dude, the train is so dude though.
Yeah, I love how sad sexual it all gets too, like a train ride across Eastern Europe. And I do genuinely mean when I say that the better moments of the game in terms of story, atmosphere, and crazy set pieces are most definitely here. That insanely gorgeous, fully explorable city you've been seeing peppered throughout this review, for example, hails from this segment. Not to mention just how eventful the game is as a whole because of this. Anything from nighttime forest exploration with cutie girl and jumping between airships as they explode to taking down huge army bases by way of stealthy destruction. This game does it all. You don't just fight car, town car, fetch quest, cutscene, fight car. Stuff actually happens that shakes up the gameplay, atmosphere, and general pacing. It's really pretty neat and in some cases entirely optional. And due to all of this crazy shit clearly taking its toll on not only the world of EOS itself, but also on the boys' bondage, the story gets dark. So dark that the screen just turned black because I refuse to talk about it.